Morning, folks. I hope all is well. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. It's about 6:30 now, I'd say. Yeah, just gone that time there now on a Saturday morning. I have a client coming in there at 7:30, so I said I'd get this recorded before he came in. Last week, I recorded this on a Friday morning, and I remember me saying that I recorded it for 45 minutes, set it all up, downloaded it, was editing it, and I somehow made a balls of a file and deleted it. So I had to, I went away afterwards. That was in the morning. I went away afterwards, and before I put my fist through the window here in the office, I went away and got a coffee for myself to calm down a small bit. That unfortunately had the opposite effect and did not calm me down. Internally, at least, I came back to record after lunch, and I was all over the gaff. The place I went actually is a very good coffee, but it's very strong. And I was jittery as hell, so I had to scrap that. I came in then Saturday morning, recorded around this time, and I found that works best for me. I found that this won't really be groundbreaking, but I found for me certain days of the week, certain times of the day are better for doing certain tasks. I can do stuff on Mondays that I can't do on Fridays. I think that's a bit of an obvious one, but during the day I find that I can do stuff. I have certain blocks. So I can do certain stuff between 9 and 12 that I can't do after lunch. I'll come in the morning, and my first block is usually creative tasks. Anything super creative I have to do that doesn't come natural to me. I'm not a naturally creative person. I'm more of a task orientated. Give me 7 things to do and I can do that and make sense of it. Creativity comes difficult to me. So I do those around 9 o'clock in the morning, and then after lunch, I can just do tasks like program updates and admin tasks. Anyways, so I'm doing this here now this morning because my plan was to do it later on in the day, but I know things will get away from me. I have a couple of things to do and I just won't have it later, so we'll do it now. Anyway, bit of a side tangent there, but thank you for listening to this week's episode. Today I'm going to talk about discipline. And I know we've heard that word a million times. It's almost generic now, a bit of a buzzword. And there's a million different ways of describing discipline, and everyone has their own theories on it and what it is and what it shouldn't be. But I heard a great definition of it during the week, and then I heard someone give their thoughts on it, and I thought it was very good actually. And the definition I heard was from Alex Hormozy. And he basically says that discipline is doing the thing you said you'd do long after the mood you said it in has gone. And it's so true. It's unreal, because I've said this in the past, to a couple of clients, and they're being a bit hard on themselves. But when we set out goals and big grand plans, we say it in a state where we're highly motivated usually. We're either positively motivated or we're negatively motivated, but either way we're motivated. It's, I'm going to do that fucking thing. Yeah, fuck yeah, finally I'm going to do it. Let's go. And the conditions are good. We're sitting inside in, the kitchen at home, maybe inside in the bedroom. We've got our journal out. We've got a candle lighting. It's nice and warm. The conditions are perfect. Our brain is running rampant. We're writing it all down. And the plan looks unbelievable. And we're very, very excited to do it. And then you run through the plan. Discipline isn't a problem because, fuck yeah, we're going to do it. But then life starts to reality kicks in. We have to get up in the morning. It's early, it's dark, it's wet. You can hear the wind outside. You could either do the session now, or maybe I could do it later after work would be easier, And that's when things start getting tough. You come home after a 12-hour shift. You come in the door. Kids are shouting. Your partner's done feck all. They're looking at you to get the dinner ready. You have to get the dinner ready. Get the kids to do their homework. And then maybe you get to do your training session after. Maybe the boss is ringing you, asking, I sent you an email. Can you just look at that email there when you're supposed to be at home? And all this type of stuff. We know yourself. Everyone has their own reality when stuff tends to get difficult. So I think that's a great definition, because what are you going to do in those moments? That's real discipline then. It's doing the thing in the moment when you don't want to do it. It's doing the thing that you don't want to do today so you can do the thing tomorrow. It's also not doing the thing that you want to do today. So doing the lazy thing, having the easy food option, taking the easy choice, and doing that today because you want that today. You want that instant gratification instead of putting it off for down the line for what you ultimately want. And that's what discipline is in a nutshell there, which I thought was a fantastic way of phrasing it. Discipline is doing the thing you said you'd do long after the mood you were in when you said it is gone. It's so true, so true. And I heard then someone else talk about discipline and how discipline for me, right, personally, for many, many years was, I always felt there should be a constant grind. That you shouldn't be having fun, that it should be constant, work hard, get after it. You don't want to do it? Shut up and do it. Just get after the thing. And that kind of discipline and that kind of outlook is not 100% a bad thing. It served me well for a long time, but it burns really hot. It's like rocket fuel. It'll take you to the moon, but it might only get you there once, or it might get you there halfway. Do you know what I mean? It's going to burn out at some stage, and you can't be constantly relying on it. It's good to have it inside in the bag, inside in the tool belt for when you need it, because you will need to grip yourself at times, You will have to grip yourself. But if you're just constantly fueling yourself on that, it's not going to end well. And I can't remember who was talking about it actually, but they were kind of saying that in order for discipline to work, that the human soul needs something to work towards. It needs a win. It needs some fun, and it needs some pleasure along the way. There has to be moments where it is fun and it is pleasurable. That if all you're doing is doing something because you hate yourself, maybe you think, fuck's sake, I'm disgusting. I'm fucking sick shit of myself. Look at the fucking state of me. How have I let myself get this way? You're a fucking idiot. Right, that's it, we're done. And then your only outlook and your only mindset is I'm not going to be this fucking person anymore. You're a disgrace. I'm going to lose all the weight. I'm going to run to the top of the mountain, whatever it may be. A little bit of that is okay. It's okay to have a little bit of disgust in yourself, absolutely. I'm not saying that you should be your best friend all the time, writing motivational quotes in the mirror, affirmations, all that type of stuff. Everything has a time and a place, but there has to be some fun and some pleasure and some purpose behind what you're doing. And in the pursuit of discipline, it is important that you know yourself. It's very, very important to understand why you're doing the thing, why this is so important to you, why it's so valuable to you, and that you don't end up pursuing the wrong goals for the wrong reasons. And I spoke there last week about my reasons for doing things, but looking ahead at my vision for my life, what I want my lifestyle to look like, and what my values are. And then I set out my goals based on that, and then I set out my habits in order to achieve those goals. And that's essentially, again, filters in and connects with what I'm talking about here today. It is important to look ahead and you understand what your values are, what is important to you in the world, and then you map out your goals and your habits in order to achieve that. And for me last week, I spoke about, what I'm looking to do so I want my life to be simpler. I want things to slow down. I want to have more fun. And what I'm doing along the way then to make that happen. Things like my training. So I'm not just training because I don't like myself. I want to be skinnier. I want to be a bit more buff. I want to be able to run more miles. I'm not happy because I can't run so many miles. Like, that's not just my goal with training. I am training for races. And that brings the fun and the enjoyment into it. And that certainly helps me then be disciplined along the way when I'm struggling. I'm trying to become a better communicator. So in order to do that, I'm making videos. I'm sitting down creating this podcast. This is fun for me. I enjoy this. I enjoy getting better at it. Sometimes I don't like it. It can be a bit of a grind. I get up here on a Saturday morning at 5:30, set up this camera, sit in a room by myself and talk to it. I, need to make sure that what I'm saying actually makes sense. Bit of pressure to it, It's not all fun and games. I have to motivate myself and I have to be disciplined to do this. But ultimately, there's enjoyment to it. When I played back my podcast last week and had a listen to it afterwards, I was really, really happy with how far my communication has come. Is it perfect? Not at all. I have a long way to go with that, but I enjoyed that and I have those little fun moments along the way. And that's why it's so important, and this almost ties into last week's episode, that's why it's so important that there's purpose behind your goals and that they're for you and they're intrinsically important to you. Understanding what your values are. Values is something I've spoken about a lot in the podcast. Not a lot. I've spoken about it before in the earlier episodes. And your values essentially are who you are. They're your North Star. They stop you from getting into trouble. They stop you from doing things you don't want to be doing. They stop you from setting goals that aren't really your goals. So you don't set a goal, I want to lose 30 kilos. You then go and lose 30 kilos and you realise that's not what you wanted at all, because now you're not happy where you are. You're by yourself. You're surrounded by people you don't even like. You're living a lifestyle you don't enjoy at all because you weren't really clear on your values. You've ended up somewhere, you've taken a job that paid an extra $5,000 a year, but now it means you're travelling an hour and a half to work every day, there and back, and you're working weekends. Because again, you got caught up in a goal that wasn't important to you. You just saw the money and got carried away in the excitement of it. That's why it's important to understand your values. I'll talk about values in a different podcast, but essentially my values last week, so one of my values is simplicity, right? I want to have a simple life. I want to have a slower life. I want to have more fun. That is a value for me. And then within that value, I've broken that down into family stuff I want to do, training goals, diet goals, lifestyle goals. They're all within that value. And that then stops me from doing things I don't want to do. So I tell myself I want to slow down. I want to live a simpler life. When someone then approaches me with an opportunity, or if I want to take something on, or if I get excited by something, I can then sit down and say, is that actually now in alignment with my values? If I take on this thing and I do this, what will my life look like afterwards, and will I be happy about that? I spoke last week about wanting to get offline more, and that's why I'm creating this epic in-person business. But if I wasn't clear on that value and why that was important to me, I could have then turned around a week later, someone said, there's this opportunity, I'll help you expand your coaching business. I can get you another 100 clients, and I have had this, by the way. I can get you another 100 clients, you'll be earning 20k a month, you'll have an epic business, but the only thing is that you're going to spend every waking moment online. I know online coaches I have a friend of mine who is, in that bracket. He's got well over 100 clients, he's making 20 odd K a month, but he spends 4 days a week doing check-ins. He's just doing check-ins for 4 days. And then the other 3 days, he's making content, marketing and all that type of stuff. That would be my worst nightmare. I would be so unhappy and so miserable, and trying to be disciplined doing that, it would have been a burning hot fire, because I would have had to every day get up and just fucking talk myself in the mirror. I'd have to be getting after it, because there would be no fun and enjoyment there for me. and I would have gotten caught up in the over 100 clients, over 20K a month. And that's how we fall down these traps, and we're not clear on our values. I've done an episode on values, I'm sure, before. I might write an email on it this week and maybe do a podcast on it. Next week, I have something I want to talk about for next week. But so understanding your values and knowing your values is one thing, but then there's the standards then as well. So basically, you know what your values are, then you need to figure out what your standards are, and your standards are essentially your habits. And in order to be disciplined at something, you have to set yourself out a set of standards. For me last week, again, the habits are essentially the standards, aren't they? So no social media first hour and last hour, putting my phone in the landline in the house, not watching the news, following my 6 dietary principles, working on my communication every week. Those are the standards I set myself. And in order to be disciplined at those standards, I need to be crystal clear on what my values are. And then in amongst that, like I said, they all need to be fun. They all need to lead to a good outcome. And I've explained to you what my outcome was last week. I'm looking for this lifestyle where I'm having fun. It's full of value. I'm spending it with people. I'm outside. I'm not online anymore. I'm not staring at my phone. And that, for me, when I look at that, I'm like, yes, that's the life I want. And I've picked out a set of goals and habits along the way that will allow me to have fun while doing that. Will it be all fun? Absolutely not. Of course not. I made a post this week about going out for a run in the Curragh Woods. I'm a bit sick. I love the Curragh Wood, and there's some sections there into the rivers and everything, and Beamish loves it, and I do have a good time once I'm out there. But just the thought of getting there in the morning doesn't fill me with excitement anymore. I'm going there now in the morning, meeting Killian, actually, who'll be watching this, and we're going to go for about 2 hours 45, maybe 3 hours. And it doesn't excite me, you know what I mean? First thing in the morning, I'd rather be down in Kerry running over the hills, but we can't do that every week. So I have to push myself to do that, but I can be disciplined to do that because I know that not long from now, I'm going to be in the Scottish Highlands, running through on top of a mountain somewhere that I could probably only have dreamed of one day. And that's what keeps me disciplined towards that. So I still have that in me. When I really started out, I suppose I really started out my whole thing probably 2011 when I applied for the army. I really had to dig deep for that and really get over a lot of insecurities, which I kind of touched on a small bit last week, about physical stuff as well, because I was just such a skinny, unfit person. So I was using that burning hot fire for that fuel, that motivation, for that discipline, that almost a little bit of self-hatred in there. And that was really there then after I came out of the army and I took on the ultra endurance stuff. I had a lot of hang-ups when I came out. Wasn't in a good place mentally, mindset-wise, and that drove me for a long time. Fuck them, fuck you, everything. Right? That was my fuck you mentality. And that really drove me for a long time. But then, after a few years, I was really starting to struggle. I wasn't as on the balls I used to be. I was not able to get a grip of myself as easily. I wasn't. The self-talk was becoming a bit toxic, and that's what happens with this. With this kind of discipline, should be a grind. It should be a constant grind mentality. The self-talk can become a bit toxic, and I've gradually learned along the way that that's really not going to cut it. And when I heard that person articulate it last week, that was really then when I was like, oh yeah, that's what I figured out. I figured it out along the way, but I hadn't quite articulated it. Do you ever experience that when you know something, you have it in your head, you understand it, but you almost can't say it in words? And when I heard that person talk about that, that's really kind of made me think, oh yeah, okay, that's what That's what that is. And that there really is what I wanted to talk about today on discipline. Because I do think I'm not the only one who has gotten this wrong, in the past. I think that if you do look at the hustle culture, the grind culture, the grind mindset, you will see online now, I think a lot of people think that that's the way it should be. And I'm not saying that's the way it shouldn't be. I absolutely idolise people like David Goggins. He got me literally through my first Ironman, down in the kitchen by myself on my bike trainer. The old bike trainer didn't have the fancy Bluetooth on it. Literally staring at an iPad in front of the wall, 4 o'clock in the morning, cycling for 3.5 hours before I went out laying blocks that morning on the building sites. Like, I literally had him on my screen in front of me with that fucking grind, get after it, almost self-hatred approach to discipline and mindset and motivation. It can be very effective, but it is a burning hot fuel. And over time, it gets more toxic. The self-talk can become more toxic, at least in my experience. So that's just something to be aware of with discipline. At the end of the day, it must be driven by self-love. And I know that's probably not something you'd hear me say a lot, but you must be behaving out of love for a future you, for something down the line that you ultimately want for you, not because you're just disgusted with yourself right now and it's just the disgust you're focusing on. It needs to be something that is intrinsically important to you down the line. It's about being true to yourself and what's important to you. Ultimately, it's about avoiding instant gratification. So putting off the things you want to do today, or else doing the things that you don't want to do in order to do something that you know is intrinsically important to you down the line. And it needs to be intrinsically important to you. It can't be somebody else's goal. It can't be what you think somebody else wants. You can't just be focusing on them. You need to be focusing on you with sprinkles of them thrown in there. There are days when you need to have that fuck you mentality, but you can't be solely driven on it. There needs to be fun along the way, and just constantly grinding and bullying yourself. Bullying yourself is really probably where I started getting into at some point down the line, almost bullying yourself into it. That won't end well in the long term. So get crystal clear on what your values are, what's important to you. When I talk about values, for me, I talk about things like simplicity, slow living, gratitude, humility, discipline is a value, integrity. These are all values to me. And within that, then there's the things like family and all that stuff. People will say, well, I value my family. That's pretty obvious, but it's within those. So when you look at integrity, your family's in there. I value integrity, being truthful and honest with my family, to my partner. That's where integrity comes in and amongst things like your family. So understanding what your values are and then what your standards are. You have to set yourself out some standards. I talk about the dieting and the principles, and I actually done a reel yesterday, a clip from last week's podcast, where I spoke about having SOPs, not just going off out into the world and hoping things will work out for you and hoping you're in a good mood that day, And that's all I want to talk about. So I think I've covered everything I want to say there. A lot shorter than last week's podcast, but I hope that's clear on what I wanted to get across. So discipline, doing the thing you said you'd do long after the mood you said it in has gone. And back to the very first point again, but when we set out these goals and plans, just remember you always say it in a place that's not really going to be a reality when you have to do it. So when you make out these plans, you're going to be sitting down nice and warm in your journal, on your computer, in a good frame of mind. Maybe it's a negative frame of mind, but the conditions are going to be there for you when you set out these plans. and the conditions aren't going to be there when you go to follow through on your plans. This is why it's important that you're intrinsically clear on what your goals are, why they're your goals, you have a vision of your lifestyle, you understand what your values are, and that you're aware of the fact that you're not always going to want to do it. You're going to need to do stuff today you don't want to do. You're going to have to avoid doing stuff today so you can do stuff later on in life. And that there's both sides to discipline, but ultimately it must be driven by self-love. There has to be enjoyment along the way. There has to be a purpose to it. There has to be some fun along the way, or else you're going to burn out at some stage and fall into that kind of toxic state that I spoke about. And often then it ends up going to the reverse, where down the road you actually end up worse off than when you started. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I really, really appreciate every single one of you. Thank you. I had some great feedback as well from last week. And I appreciate all kinds of feedback, good and bad. If you're watching this as well and you think that there's something that I could improve upon, maybe the structure, maybe the setting, anything at all. Maybe I go on and waffle too much. I'm not afraid to hear that as well, because it's good. I mean, it'll allow me to get better. Anyways, have a great weekend, and I will see you in the next one.